I grew up in a small town that was about 15 minutes outside of Paris. Yes, this story takes place in France. For personal reasons, I'm not going to name the town, but in short, let's just say that it's full of a bunch of elderly people who love to give blood donations. I was around 13 or 14 years old. I'm female, and I'd recently dropped out of normal school due to severe bullying. I began doing online school, which was much easier because there were less people picking fights with me. My older sister would leave early in the morning to go to school, while my dad would leave at the same time for work. My mom would stay home with me for a few hours in the morning before going out and doing some work as well. That would leave me home alone all day until my sister, dad, and mom came back. I didn't really mind being on my own that much. My parents, however, weren't too happy with me being on my own at the time. I didn't pay much attention to their worries or warnings about the growing dangers in our town and in France in general. When I look back on this now, I realize how weird and slightly creepy this was. I'm just going to tell you what was going on in my town so that you can understand some context. Since there were many elderly people, it was pretty easy to break in and rob them. I don't want to sound offensive, but there were these old fat men from Romania. They would come into different towns, including mine, and recruit teenagers to rob houses. In return, they would give them money, drugs, and so on. Usually the teenagers would run up and down different streets and ring people's doorbells. Actually, I should say fence bells. In France, everyone has a fence going around their house, and we don't have guns like in America, unless you're a hunter and work at a market or something. Then there's a lot of restrictions. The teens would come up to people's houses, ring their doorbell, and wait a few minutes. They'd watch the house for a while and then run off. They usually did this to see who would respond. It was a way of checking to see who was home or if someone was even home at all. When this happens, it's best to call the police. The teens would usually try to outrun the cop cars. Sometimes there were fake entrepreneurs who would ring people's doorbells and try to sell them something. They really just wanted you to open the gate so they could get in and rob you. Recently, before this incident, an old lady was beaten and robbed because she opened her gate for two police officers. They said they wanted to ask her some questions about a case, but they weren't real police officers. Now that you know about that, my story will make much more sense. The teens running up to people's gates was a daily thing, so we were all used to it. I'm quite a curious person, so when the doorbell rang, I peeped my head out the curtains to see who it was. I have a really good memory, so I still remember what this guy looked like. He had an American-style high school sports team jacket. His hair was slightly spiky with what looked like hair gel, and he wore dark blue skinny jeans with white sneakers. I didn't think he saw me since I just stuck my head through the curtains for a few seconds. My parents told me to call the police when this happened, but I didn't feel threatened. Eventually he left and I went on with my work. Over the next couple of weeks, I'd see him come up and ring the doorbell. He would wait, scan the house, and then leave. This started to happen more and more frequently, and I still never called the police on him. I guess I figured that if something were to happen, I'd use my taekwondo on him and his buddies, but I highly doubted that that would happen. On some days, he would come early in the morning and watch my father and older sister leave the house. He just stood there watching them. I thought this was weird, but I still wasn't too alarmed. One day, however, he was standing outside our house. He was across the street just watching us for hours on end until my mom came home another day. I saw him in his usual spot across the street just staring at us again. He must have been there for 2 hours until a black car with tinted windows pulled up. He got into the car and sat there for a few minutes before driving away slowly. I thought that was odd, but I never mentioned it to my parents. Well done. Younger me a few days later, I was doing my schoolwork when my mom